Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast, where you'll be not only allowed, but encouraged to dream big dreams and imagine the very best future for yourself and your family. Throw away expectations and perfection and embrace the messy beauty of what it means to be a marvelous mom. I'm your host, Kirsten Tyrell, and I can't wait to help you discover what makes you marvelous. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode. I have a wonderful friend here on the podcast who I met, I dare say, almost 2 years ago, which is insane how fast time goes, but it really has been that long. Micala Quinn is visiting here today. She's visiting the podcast.
I wish I was.
Faraway land. I know. I wish you were sitting on my couch right now and we could talk about all of our messy life problems in real life, face to face. But alas, you guys, Micala is at her home. I am at my home, but we are chatting today. And we're going to share so many good things with you. Micala is one of those amazing mompreneurs who's found a way to be at home with her kiddos while still earning an income. And it's probably not in the way that you may have ever heard here on the podcast. So thanks for being here, Micala. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I'm going to give everybody, this is I normally just roll right into hearing about your kids, but that's next. First, I want to tell everybody the funniest memory that I have from you. And literally, you guys, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Do you know?
Yes, I know what you're going to say.
So I did Micala's makeup in an airport. But the funny thing about it is the day before we had talked about doing this and we never gotten around to it. Well, I had to end up doing it in the airport, which we luckily ran into each other. But she had a really big, it wasn't like a black eye. It was like a bruised nose, right? Like you ran into something.
No, it was at the Boss Mom retreat and I was doing karaoke.
Oh, yeah.
And instead of karaokeing by myself, I had a partner.
Oh, no.
We did a duo and I was dancing and singing and she was going to hand me the microphone, but it was at a point where I was doing a low boogie and my face was moving downward and I was going down, she was going up, and the microphone just smacked me in the face, knocked me over. I was bloody nose on the stage. It turned into this black eye, black nose.
Oh.
It looked like someone punched me.
Yeah, it was quite a sight. It was it was a little worrisome. I was like, what in the world? But it's just so funny. Of all the weird things for me to that's the only time we've ever spent in person together. And so now it's maybe forever until I see you again in real life. I'm going to just picture that's just what you look like.
I know. Oh my gosh. That was so fun.
Wow.
And you did a rockin' awesome job with the makeup because
thanks.
you couldn't even tell.
No, you really couldn't. It was pretty magnificent. I mean, what can I say? Skills, right?
Right.
Well, okay. So today we're going to chat about a lot of different things. So let's first start out by hearing about your kids. And I know this in and of itself could potentially lead into a story. And I want you to go as far into that as you would like. This is it's a tender thing, right? You've had some rough patch there that I know you said is not something you really move past. It's still something you're going through, but just to preface that, you guys, this is not just any normal tell me about your kids situation. So go ahead, Micala.
I have to take a deep breath. That's always, that's such a normal question, but it's such a hard question for me. Because I have 3 kids, but when you look at social media right now, chances are you'll only see 2 kids. And a lot of people don't know that I actually have 3. And my oldest is McLaren. She is 4 years old. She is a spitfire. I'm not worried about her. You know that quote, they're either going to be leading their empire or leading a gang in prison. That is totally her. And I'm going to cross my fingers. It's going to be an empire.
It will be. Look at whose footsteps she's following in.
Right. Not a gang in prison. But no, she is independent, tells it like it is, knows what she wants. And she's only 4. And I feel like I've created a monster. Yeah, so she is 4 and my second son is George. And if he passed away when he was 8.5 months old, and if he was still here, still with us, he would be, gosh, he would be about 2.5.
Yeah.
2.5. Yeah. That's crazy to think how old he would be. It was sudden. He was beautiful. He was like, oh my gosh, I just can picture like his chubby cheek smile. And he's still very much a part of our lives.
Yeah.
We moved houses and we like live really close to the cemetery where he is buried. So every time I'm driving and going out that way, I drive by the cemetery and we always stop and say a little prayer like in the car as we're passing by.
Mm-hmm.
And so George would be 2.5. And after he passed away, my husband and I have always wanted to have a big family. That was something we talked about when we were dating. And after George passed away, one of the feelings we kept feeling was just like emptiness, like our arms were empty. I'm used to having 2 kids, and it's like going from 2 kids to 1. It was
That's probably so confusing to just every single part of you, like emotionally and physically. Just like, wait,
yes.
what?
Yes.
You're probably feel like you're always missing something, always missing someone. Obviously, aside from like
Mhm.
the emotional
Mhm.
missing the baby, just
Yes.
something's missing. Something's off. Yeah.
Yes. And so early on we were like, we want more kids. We want to continue to grow our family. And so that I'm sure that shocked some people nearby, and they were like, wait, are you sure? Are you ready? And I don't think you can ever be ready, but we wanted to not make that choice, and we just wanted to see what God's plan was for us. And we got pregnant quickly, probably about 2 months after he passed away. And our third baby, Thomas, was born. He is now 9 months old. Like when we first found out I was pregnant, I was praying that I wasn't going to have a boy. Like I didn't want a boy. I didn't think I could handle it having another boy. Cause like my genes run strong. And when you like look at my kids and you look at me and you look at my mom and my brothers and my dad, like my mom's genes run strong. And that's how like McLaren was. She looks a lot like me and a lot like my siblings and my mom. And I knew that if I had a boy, he would look like George. And so I prayed and prayed and prayed, like, I don't think I can handle a boy. I don't think I can handle a boy. And we found out early, and we found out we were having a boy, and I was like, okay, well, please don't look like George. I don't think I could mentally handle that, because this is going way different than I thought it was going. But like my husband and I, one of our concerns was we don't want people to think that we are replacing George. Like he is always going to be a part of our family. Just because we are continuing to grow our family, it does not, like, there will never ever be a replacement for our son. And we were scared that people would see us pregnant again and see like another child, and like, God forbid if I smiled again, like I didn't want people to think as I was okay, because I'm never going to be like okay. And
that is such a layer of stress to take upon yourself. Just like feeling like you need to explain or owe anybody anything just for your process of healing. That makes me so sad, because, and I know, but that's normal. Like I know a lot of people in your shoes would do the same thing of like, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like you should never, on top of already being in grieving mode and going through your own stuff. It's unfortunate that we're in a society, I guess, where you feel like you need to explain that away, or that you need to already be thinking ahead of being afraid to be happy, because it means something's wrong with you if you're trying to move forward. And because, life has to move on. It just does. And that's what George would want for you anyway, right? Like,
right. And
so
for a while we were like, no, like life stops. We're just gonna sit in this bed. We sold our house. We moved in with my parents. And we could barely get out of bed. We could barely take care of our daughter. But the fact that we had her was like what my husband will say, she saved his life.
Yeah.
Because of her smile and like just her sweet, innocent personality. Which I know in the beginning, I described her as either going to lead a gang. She has that super compassionate, like empathetic side, but also that don't mess with me it's my way, my way personality.
Well, and that's the cool thing is people can be both. They can be
Yes.
that, that polar opposite as fiercely as they're gonna protect who they are. They're also going to fiercely love people. So I can totally see
Yeah.
those personality traits going hand in hand. That's really
Yeah. And sure enough, so I prayed that like, please don't give me a son that looks just like George. I can't. I thought it would be traumatic and like haunting and triggering and just, I didn't think I could handle it. And Thomas was born and he is identical to George. And it has been
wow.
so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like reflecting on this the other day and just like staring at him and on like, oh my God, I see your brother. Like I see your brother. And it's every time I look at him, I remember George and it's like dual emotions. It's that happiness and love. But Thomas for us was just a sign of hope, a sign that,
that life goes on.
I guess like life goes on is a weird, I'm not sure I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it like in the beginning that phrase made me so mad. I was like, I don't want it to go
You
on.
want
Like
it
it
to stay
can't.
how it was. Yeah. Yeah.
But it has to. And one of the big things I realized after I spent some time just like barely getting by, barely getting out of bed, barely eating was life is going by, like whether I want it to or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I can either choose to wither away here in this room, or I can live a good life and make sure that my daughter lives a good life and hope to, raise more children and help them to live a good
Yeah.
life. And it was like one day I just had to make that choice of it is okay to be happy. It is okay to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's 100% what George would want. And he lives on through us, through our hearts, through our memories. And when we are doing fun family things, when we travel, when we spend, Saturdays exploring our city, he's with
Mm-hmm.
us. And no matter what we do, he's with us. So we might as well make it count and make it worth something.
That's beautiful. Oh, well, I know that was like a harder thing to focus on, but I feel like I couldn't share your story without that. Like that's such a key thing about who you are and who you've even become since I met you, because that happened shortly after I
Yeah.
met you. And
Yeah.
it's definitely not the whole thing we want to talk about the entire call, although I'm sure you definitely could. And it's such like I've heard from people who lose, children or spouses, you just want to hear their name and you want to talk about them as much as
Mm.
you can to keep their memory alive and to, um, but you are an amazingly talented woman. And you guys, the reason I wanted Micala on here too is, and the reason I needed you to know that part of her story is I've never seen anybody, and this is why I'm saying it's sad that you had fear of bouncing back and fear of like being happy, is you literally have just gone forward step after step after step, and you've kind of been like the prime example of one day at a time, right? Like it's not like you were just like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to mask over all my sorrow and just like go forward and pretend nothing ever happened, but it's just this like one foot in front of the other, because I have to keep showing up for my family. I have to keep growing. I have to keep advancing. Like I can't let everything else fall apart. And you've been so good at that. And I've seen your business flourish and grow to such a beautiful spot from where I first met you to now it's like a multi six-figure business, which is absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. So give us a little feedback. Give us a little bit of like a backstory on that and how you really moved from the space of being a teacher into a work from home mompreneur.
Yeah. So I owe like my business and my entrepreneur drive and spirit to my children. I grew up knowing I wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. I played school in our basement. I had my own like fake classroom. I
Mhm.
took all of her old school supplies. It was like a legit classroom.
Awesome.
So fun. I love like me and my American Girl dolls. And I basically just took roll and gave spelling tests. That's all I did.
Right, of course, because what
But
else
it was
are you
so
gonna
fun.
do?
Yeah. And I went to college, majored in secondary education with an emphasis in English, and then right after college, I got my dream job at the dream school I wanted to work at. And I taught sophomore English for 4 years.
Awesome.
I absolutely loved it my first year. It was so fun to finally earn money, even though I was earning pennies.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great first job. I was given the pre-AP honors English class, sophomores, and it was like starting the curriculum from scratch. So I really got to build out my own curriculum. I wasn't just given something like, here's what you have to do. And it was also like when Common Core was starting to take over, and which for we don't have to get into all of the education stuff, but for English, I was a fan of those objectives, those standards.
Yeah.
And it was just fun. And then I was also planning a wedding. And so my second year teaching, I got married, and we got married in September. And then in mid-October, I found out I was pregnant. So we got pregnant like day of the wedding or right after. And our daughter was born 9 months, and her due date was 9 months and 2 days. And she was a little stubborn thing and came 9 months and 4 days after our wedding.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Stubborn from the get-go.
I love it.
I did not want to put her in daycare. I did not want to go back to teaching, but I had to because one income was not going to work for us. And that was she was born in June. I went back probably in October. So I got to like extend my summer a little bit, and that was awesome. But it was so hard. And I just felt like in this constant state of like rushing out the door, rushing home, rushing through dinner, rushing through bedtime to like just have 30 minutes to myself before I went to bed. And then like a hamster wheel, did it all again the next day. I had like so much work that I brought home because it was English and I taught honors. So there was lots of paper writing and lots of grading and lots of reading.
Oh man.
And I just got to this point where I felt stuck and really wanted to work from home. And no matter how many temper tantrums I threw, my husband would not budge. And it wasn't that it was like him saying, you have to work. It was literally like logistics. If you look at our budget, like
There's just no other way.
There's just no other way. And so I finally realized probably about Christmas time, I spent the October, November, probably half of December, just like bitter, resentful, angry. And then I reached a point where I was like, okay, make a decision. Either find a solution. You've got to bring in X amount of dollars, or get over it and just accept that this is how things are. Well, my daughter gets her stubbornness from me. And so I refused to just accept that that's how things were going to be. And I started looking for ways to work from home. And I found freelancing, and I got started as a virtual assistant. That's like the short version of snap my fingers, I got started. No, it was like a 7-month process of getting nowhere. And then finally I got my first client. And from there, it was kind of like another 6 months. And then I had replaced my teaching income. I more than replaced it. I was, as a teacher, I made like $2,000 before taxes but that was working like 50 to 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
As a virtual assistant and social media manager, I was working 15 to 20 hours and making $3,000 to $3,500 a month.
Yeah, not a bad
before
improvement.
taxes. Yeah. And the year that I was building my business, I finagled our budget to where I could work part-time, and then I didn't take a plan. So it was like constant all day, no break, and part-time daycare plus my mother-in-law watched one day. It was like a break even. And so I was able to build my business on my off day.
Smart.
That April, George was born. And so I went on maternity leave and never went back.
I like that. That's probably the best day ever of not going back, right?
I'm so happy right now because we're recording this. It's almost August, and all teachers in Kansas City, they probably report back in a week.
Yeah.
And I don't have to go back. And it is, this is my third year not going back, second year not going back. So it's just, it's exciting.
Yeah. What I love is that there are so many people who I've actually been going through a little bit of like a mental just trying to understand why so many people stay stuck when I'm like, am I missing something? Is this supposed to be a lot more difficult than it is? Because even hearing you say the difference in pay from doing your own thing, working less hours to what you were doing before, both things you were passionate about, but the second one gave you the freedom to be home with your kids, which has now become like super, super important to you and is totally like what most moms wish that they could do most. I know there's some who are like, I need to work, I need to be gone. Right. But
Yeah.
it's just like I want
And I totally need to work too. Like
yeah.
I thought being a stay-at-home mom was going to be everything I wanted and more. But when I had like little bits and pieces of like true stay-at-home momhood,
Mhm.
I go crazy. Like I need a project. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I might as well just give all my money to Nordstrom.
Mhm. I have a friend who did that once. She's like, "I'm gonna just see what it's like to not work," because she loves working, and she's like, "Well, if I don't work, I eat ice cream and I online shop. So it's probably best that I'm earning money instead of spending all my money."
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I
Right.
love that you made that transition though into something that was like it's even just so great to be able to call the shots to make it your own. Even though you loved your job, you loved teaching and everything, just to have the control over your time and to just
Yes.
feel like there's so much more joy in what you do when you feel like it's a choice and it's not something you have to do.
Absolutely. But I was gonna say, like I'm an English teacher, so like the juxtaposition between McLaren's infant years and like George's infant years are so black and white different.
Yeah.
Like McLaren had the bitter, angry mom. George had the mom that like woke up every day. I worked. I did the nap time hustle. I would work from like 5 to 7 a.m. and then when both kids napped from like 1 to 3,
Mhm.
and I would wake up, work, and then George would wake up, and so I'd go feed him. We'd snuggle, cuddle, just be for a little bit in the morning, and then McLaren would wake up, and we had like the same routine, and it was just like ordinary and
Mhm.
boring, but perfect.
Yeah.
And everything I wanted because I was making money, I was working on my schedule, and then we got to go to the park in the mornings or go on walks, or we have a lot of fun like kid places here in Kansas City that we had memberships at and got to go do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just so different. George was never in daycare. I was with him. I mean, he had babysitters occasionally, but from like 95% of his time, I was with him.
Yeah.
I was his caregiver. I got to see all of the boring, ordinary things of him, like learning to crawl and like that progression
Mhm.
daily, all day long. And
Which is probably even more valuable now knowing you
yes,
like can you imagine if I'm sure you have imagined that. Like if you were living that same life of having missed out on a lot of that and then lost him, like how much more severe just that mom guilt would be and just that like, "Oh, I
yeah,
would have done it differently." And that's like it's almost like when you lose somebody else, you get a little glimpse into that like I've read stuff and I've heard stuff about people's regrets before they die who live like long, long lives and it's usually like failed potential, right? Like I didn't do what I should have done, what I really wanted to do with my time. And I think it's so beautiful that you were doing what you wanted to do with your time. And then you did lose someone and you didn't have to look back and think, oh, what if I would have actually like been able to be home and followed my gut to like go start my thing and to like work hard to make this happen. And I think a lot it's like such a blessing that you've kind of gotten that glimpse into really never probably allowing yourself to live anything less than the life that you want to have because you can see how short and fleeting everything is and it just becomes a lot more real that it's so temporary, right? It's so
right.
fast.
And those memories like gave me so much comfort
Mhm.
and still now like so much joy of what I got with him and
Mhm.
the time I did have, though it was short, it was beautiful.
Yeah. I'm glad that you had that time. And now, like, you've probably cherished, you know, this whole like doing it all over again. Are you guys going to have more kids too? Even I know you said you wanted a big family. Like, has it
Yeah, I
killed a
hope
little bit of
so.
that? Like, I know I've heard people say like they feel weird about admitting that they wanted another baby. I had a friend who lost a baby as well, and it was just such a healing thing to have another child. And people were
Mm,
like, they're
absolutely.
afraid, she's afraid they're going to view it as her replacing the baby, but it's not. It's just like there's an emptiness and you have to fill that, and you want to, you know, keep having a family. And she was the opposite of you, to go on a tangent. She wanted to have another little girl because she lost a little girl, and she kept having boys. I think she's had 3 boys since losing her little girl. And so for her, she just kind of has to wait until heaven to have a little daughter. But
Yeah.
anyway, digression. um as you go forward now, like, how have you kind of approached your business, even because I know that you're doing more things with your business, and I know it's probably become more demanding, but at the same time it's kind of cool because the business model that you're actually building is to support people from being overwhelmed. And so how have you kind of shaped, tell everybody, I guess, a little bit more about how the business has evolved from you freelancing into actually having like a lot more that you offer.
Yeah. So when I no longer am technically a freelancer, I no longer do client work, although I've thought about like building an agency because there is so much opportunity out there for businesses that need all of the help. And um I think it would be really cool one day
Mhm.
to have like an agency branch of my business. But for now, right now, I am all group coaching programs. And I found shortly after I quit my job, or even when I was still teaching, I was big in like a local mom Facebook group here. And every day, even multiple times a day, there were moms asking, hey, I want to work from home. I want to quit my job. I want to be a stay at home mom. Like, but we have to have an income. What can I do from home?
Mhm.
And I would just start answering their questions and being like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here are some great resources, blah, blah, blah. And occasionally I would get some people that would be like, oh, can I message you? And I was like, sure. And after about like the 10th person that was like, hey, can I message you? I just like copy pasted my spiel, put it in a Google Doc, and then made it simpler for future people to just copy and paste that over.
Yeah.
Well, after I had quit teaching, I quit in like officially in May, but I went on maternity leave in April. Probably it was early August because it was before the Boss Mom retreat where I met
Mhm.
you, but it was after I had signed up. So like the business I booked my Boss Mom ticket for, the business I had when I booked that ticket was different than the business I showed up with at the retreat. And so like from the time of like when I booked to when I showed up, there was one day in the same local mom Facebook group where someone posted and I just shared my story, and there were 50 moms that wanted to message me and like me to help them. And I was
Whoa.
like, whoa, people, I can't do this. I've got kids, I have client work. And so I just created a Facebook group. I put them all in there and started answering their questions there. And then one day, shortly after, it wasn't like, oh, months of this, it was probably a couple days after I started the Facebook group, it hit me, Micala, you're a teacher. You have that like teacher curriculum building know-how, and you also have the know-how of how to get started freelancing and how to build a business without investing a lot of time, energy, or
Mhm.
money, and building a website. And like the startup cost for freelancing can be zero.
Right.
And so I started a course that helped moms launch a freelance business from zero to whatever they needed to replace their income, $3,000 a month to about $5,000 a month.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I mean, here's what I love about that story, and what I love about most like entrepreneurial journeys is like you kind of all of a sudden were like, wait a minute, I have a skill and everybody's coming to me for it. And what have I've kind of been doing the same. I've been working on a podcast program where I'm like, wait, how many people in a day ask me how to start a podcast or what equipment I use or like how I built a business starting with a podcast? And I'm like, oh, it only has taken me 3 years to realize this is something I should clearly offer to people because they want it and they're coming to me for it. It's what I'm known for. And now it's skyrocketed your business to a totally different space that it wasn't before. And that's the beautiful thing about just starting something. You never probably could have foreseen that
Mm-hmm.
your business would turn into what it is now. Everybody wants to have all the answers figured out before they dare start. And the
Right.
most exciting thing is like, until you've ridden the roller coaster, you have no idea where the loops and turns are and everything. You can kind of see it, but once you're on the ride, you have no idea what's coming up next. It's just so fast. And it's
Mm-hmm.
super fun to be on the ride because it's unexpected and there's a lot of, fun things that you never could have seen had you not just gotten on. So I think it's pretty amazing that you um, have kind of evolved to that space where now you're making impact. And that's more of like where the legacy comes in, right? This is the part that I love about business is you're now taking your knowledge to impact tons of women who are going to now create incomes for their family, which this is the perfect space to talk about this. This is my passion. I love helping women to figure out a way to contribute, even if it's just for extra fun money or if they need it to
Yeah.
survive. Like, I love that you even have a blog post on there that's like 7 ways to make money from home without joining an MLM, because that's usually the comments you'll see everywhere. Like, well, join my company, join my company. And I'm like, it's just not for everybody. Like, MLM is not for
Yeah.
everybody, but there's so many things you can do. And I love that you're tapping into some of those, not just like little things either. These are like good money making things that you could be doing from home.
A- Absolutely. And I think people don't realize the opportunity out there. And I like to say freelancing is a gateway, like it's the gateway to entrepreneurship because for me at least, and for a lot of the women I work with, we come from our like traditional job backgrounds, which is like you wake up, you get ready for work, you drive to the office, you're there from 8, you leave at 5, and you go home and you do it again
Mm-hmm.
the next day. And like you go to college, and the only way to live a good life is to go to college and then get a job and work at that job for like 50 years. And then maybe you retire. And we think like we're ingrained that like that's the only way to live and have a stable, consistent income. Well, when I started freelancing, a lot of people didn't really understand what I was doing or who I was working for. They thought I was like a scam artist on the internet. And I run Facebook ads now, and I get a lot of people that just automatically hear work from home
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot of scams out
Yeah.
there, and they automatically hear work from home and they're like scam. And I'll get some like mean trolls commenting on my Facebook ads like, you suck, you're scamming, this is a
Oh,
joke.
geez.
And it's totally fine because I've got the most amazing women in my community that they see that and they come on and they're like, no, this is like real. And Micala changed my life. And
Good.
they like, they stick up for me, and it's awesome.
Good. Oh, I love that. I think it's
Or it makes me feel better. I'm like, I'm not like, I don't know. I want to help you,
but you're just
not if
not you're
like I
not ready
can't
for
if
it.
you're, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, that's another thing too to touch on is like everybody wants to avoid discomfort. Like we all want to avoid being judged, but the thing is you're going to be I would so much rather be judged for doing something that makes me happy than judge myself for like living in that fear zone of not going after something and not being willing to put it out there. I mean, I've been in the beauty industry before. It's not a nice space sometimes. Like everything is on your looks. And
Yeah.
it's you just have to it's not even just growing thick skin, it's just learning compassion for the people who must be in a space to leave that. And um anyway, yeah, I really do love, so you actually too have like courses and programs where you help people to kind of walk through that process, right? Like what's kind of your signature thing that you love sharing with people the most?
Well, so one of the things that I love, like before someone even thinks about coming to my course, and one of the first things when someone will message me or someone in a Facebook group post, I want to work from home, what are my options?
Mm-hmm.
I want people to first see what their skills are, because I think so many of us, and I too totally came from this place of, I don't have anything to offer. I'm just a, fill in the blank. I'm just a stay at home mom. I'm just a teacher. I'm just a nurse. I'm just a
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people have that mindset.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that too. But once I realized how my current skills, like what I was good at in my day job, once I realized how I could transition those, like apply those to the business world, it made so much more sense. And that's when I started to get traction. And so I like to help people figure out what service they could even offer before they're like, "Oh, I'm going to build a business." And
Yeah.
it's just going through looking at your strengths, looking at your skills, looking at what you're good at, not even like, oh, I'm good at marketing or, oh, I'm good at this. For me as a teacher, one of my greatest strengths was getting high school kids talking about ancient literature. And so I fully believe if I can get teenagers talking about Beowulf or Oedipus or Shakespeare, I can get anyone to talk about anything. And one of my first jobs was getting a business coach's Facebook group engaged and talking around topics that would then lead people into her programs, her paid programs. And also as a teacher, I was like kind of in a customer service role where I had like my students, I wouldn't necessarily, like students are kind of like customers-ish, but like parents and dealing with parents and knowing how to have difficult conversations. Because most of the time, if you're talking to parents, especially teens, you're not getting the like, oh my gosh, so-and-so little Johnny just loves you. No, kids don't go home. Teenagers, most of them don't go home to be like, oh, mom, I love my English teacher. It's you're talking to the kids who are like plagiarizing and not turning in their homework. So those are difficult conversations because parents are fun. And I'm sure I will be that thorn in some teacher's side one day.
Absolutely. And it's kind of, it is totally like the best practice ever though, that you've had to like, if you can walk through that fire, you can do absolutely anything. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, that I can't even imagine. It's hard enough to be the parent on the receiving end of it versus the teacher has to go
And
train
I'm
your
like
parents.
23, not married yet, first job. No, maybe this was even when I was student teaching. A kid, I can't even remember what this kid did, but they did something and the mom sat down, or maybe they had their first B. They've never had a B before. And the mom sat down and was like, I'm an attorney. And I was just like,
oh boy.
Cool. Like, what does your occupation have to do with this?
Right. Are you gonna
It was kind of like
me?
it was like, yeah, I don't really remember it, but I just remember that. It was like a threat, like you little
Don't want to
20
mess with
something
me.
don't know what you're doing and you're wrong.
Oh, brother. Oh.
Yeah, I loved it, but I'm much happier
Yeah, I was gonna
in my
say.
current teaching role.
Needless to say, you're better where you're at now and you're helping people in a completely different way.
Yeah, and not going back.
Yeah. Well, I love that. So you kind of give the clarity first before you start giving, the whole entire pie. It's like, let's figure out what kind of pie you like. And then we can dive into this as soon as we figure out what it is that you're here to do. So everybody, you guys need to go check out Micala's website, just micalaquinn.com. We'll link to everything in the show notes. And you guys go check out all of her programs and everything she has to offer. If this sounds interesting to you, which I know there's a lot of you listening who it probably does sound interesting, don't hesitate. Go check that out. Micala, my final question for you is my favorite question to ask, and it's what makes you a marvelous mom?
I think what makes me a marvelous mom is that I know I'm not perfect and I don't try to be. Our house is a mess sometimes. Sometimes I almost just had to panic. I was like, wait, what day is it? Did I miss gymnastics again? Last week we forgot about gymnastics. And I realized it as we were finishing dinner. I was like, oh my gosh, today's Wednesday. And I'm not perfect. And my daughter sees that I'm not perfect, but she also sees me do, and my son, they see me imperfectly show up and do some pretty awesome things. And I'm able to help other moms be marvelous. I'm marvelous because other people are marvelous too.
I love it. I'm glad that you owned that. I know it's an uncomfortable one, but it's good. It's good to really think and take a minute for yourself to give yourself a little bit of commendation for what you're doing right. And I think you're doing a lot right. I think that you're taking time to show up here to serve these moms on Marvelous Moms Club. You're serving in your business and you're more present with your children than you used to be. And you've really put that as a priority. So absolutely, in all the ways you belong on this podcast. What more can I say?
Well, I've got more to say. Let me just start. You got me going. Let me just knock off all my
Here's my list.
pats on the back. No, I'm just
Call me
kidding.
tomorrow. I know how to answer now. I have 20 answers. You pick the best and put it on the episode.
Let's re-record.
Well, thank you so much for spending some of your evening with me. I know that you're a busy woman and I'm grateful to you. And I know everybody's going to benefit from what they've kind of heard today and just to go dive into what you offer over there and you're part of the internet. So thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, ladies, thanks for tuning in and we'll see y'all on the next episode. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want to take action right now, you're feeling inspired and you're feeling enlightened, and you really want to own this role as a marvelous mom, go to the website, marvelousmomsclub.com/me, and create your own personal Marvelous Moms Manifesto. That is a tongue twister. marvelousmomsclub.com/me. You go fill in some great information, and in the end, you'll have a beautiful manifesto to display where only you can see or the whole family can see, where you can really, really own your role as a marvelous mom and step inside those goals and those ambitions and dreams that you have to become an even more marvelous mom to your beautiful family. So again, marvelousmomsclub.com/me. We will see you over there.